This podcast is presented by Castrol Edge Euro, the #1 brand recommended by technicians in Europe. Did you know that almost 50% of European vehicles in Canada come factory filled with Edge Euro? Offer better oil. Offer your customer Castrol Edge Euro. Questions? Contact your local auto parts distributor, or Wakefield Territory Sales Manager, or customer service at 1-800-268-5339. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Andrew Ross. Now, everybody who's been working in this industry knows, I think, by now, how important that service advisor role is, and them being able to effectively do their job. But one of the things that we haven't talked much about is that well, it's great to have a full-time service advisor there all the time. Sometimes they're not available, or they're super busy, and somebody else has to jump on the counter. Maybe it's you, the owner. Maybe it's one of your techs, and being able to have that still result in a great customer experience is super important. So here to talk about that is Jason Hladyniuk from RPM
Hey, all right.
Training.
Yeah.
And he's a full-time focused expert on helping shops make sure that excellent customer experience is repeatable and consistent. How's that for an intro, Jason?
Hey, I love it. That's perfect, Andrew.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the reality of the world is that, shops have been, sometimes they're super busy, and you've got, your main service advisor is on the phone with one customer. Somebody else maybe comes in and somebody else has to jump in, but that can lead potentially to a really variable customer experience if they don't get the right touch points, right? So
Right.
what is everybody, I guess, the full timer as well as somebody who's jumping in to fill that role, what do they need to be really focused on? If there's like a top 3 list, or I don't know, I don't want to
Right.
oversimplify it, but there's things, right?
Yes. Yes. And number one for sure is having a structured process. When an advisor is not there all the time, or someone from the shop has to come in, whether it's the owner or whether it's a technician, what happens there is that the experience can be different for the client. And we've run the risk of what I call a multiverse. Depending on who's at the counter, the experience could be, if you have 3 different people at the counter, it could be 3 different experience for the client, right? And inconsistency really hurts business. So if we have an advisor that's really behind and someone else has to jump in on the counter, they have to follow process. They have to be aware of what the intake process is, or if they're cashing someone out, what that process looks like. And when we talk about, if you're cashing somebody out, we talk about that next appointment. Is that happening? Sometimes when someone has to jump in and they're not really aware of that process, the best thing is to do is just greet the customer, greet the client, and say, "Hey, so and so will be with you in 5 minutes. Are you okay to wait?" Right?
Fair. That's fair. Yeah. If you're really not comfortable with what the process is, and if you don't know how to, you mentioned, caching somebody, if you're somebody that, hasn't done that, and you're working in the shop and you're not comfortable with the process and you don't know how to do it, like physically how to do it, you should probably not try.
Right, and we have all, so we all have the best intentions, but what's happening there is that it's creating inconsistency, right? And so if someone does need to jump in, it's still keeping that service up, but just greeting the client and just saying, "Hey, let's, or, maybe grabbing keys from a client because they have to get going, but then letting them know that, our service advisor will be contacting you if he or she has any questions," that kind of thing. Not getting so involved, but taking the baton, but then bringing it back to the professional on the
Yeah,
counter, the
that's
one
fair. I
that,
mean, I just, as regular listeners to this podcast will know, we're always trying to be real about it, and in a perfect
yeah.
world, one customer shows up at a time, and the well-trained RPM training certified service advisor, it's not actually a thing, but but a well-trained service advisor can greet them right away, and take their, have the conversation about what their needs are with their vehicle, and do all that in an organized, super simple and consistent fashion. But in the real world, as we say, That doesn't always happen. People come in all at the same time because the weather's bad and nobody's car is starting, or the
Right.
tires are, you need to switch over your tires because it just snowed, and it's all happening at the same time.
Right.
And maintaining that consistency of experience is super important uh, to the customer satisfaction level. I mean, we haven't really talked about that, but that's really what's at the core here, right? That customer experience and having consistency, right?
Right. And advisors, we have to have boundaries and we have to guide the client. What happens is that if a client doesn't understand the requirements for the appointment and think they can just show up, what it does is it puts stress on the advisor, and now we're adapting to the client, whereas the client needs to be adapting to our way, our process. Because when an advisor is fully in control of the experience, it's going to be the best experience for the client, it's going to be the best experience for the business and the technicians, and it's going to be the best experience for the advisor,
Right,
right?
right. So that sounds
And,
like point one is like control that conversation, right?
yeah, you have to be clear about requirements. For example, if someone's calling in and they need a seasonal tire changeover, what are the requirements for that? One of the things should be a wheel lock. Having discussions on the wheel lock while making the appointment, and then instructing the client that the wheel lock needs to be, say, in the cup holder. And if the wheel lock's not in the cup holder, the vehicle doesn't come into the shop, right? So what happens is that when we discover when we ask these questions for the client, we're slowing the process down, and this will be the perfect time when the client says, "I don't know what a wheel lock is." Ah, perfect. So now we can take the time to educate them of what it is, and then it gives them time to look for it rather than the day of the appointment or when it comes into the shop for the tire changeover, and then we're trying to get a hold of that client because we can't find their wheel lock, right?
Right.
So, and again, if clients don't know, they don't know. If they don't know about their wheel lock or they don't know they have to put it in their cup holder, how are they supposed to know? So then, and they don't know what we go through in a day. So when the car comes in, all of a sudden there's frustration. Minutes turn into, minutes
Yeah.
turn into a lot of minutes, turn into a half hour, and we still haven't got the wheels off. We're trying to
Right.
get a hold of the client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a great example because we've all very familiar with situations where even when that hasn't been left where it's supposed to be, and the car ends up in the bay anyway, even if that's not what the process should be, and you have a tech looking for it, maybe not finding it at all in the vehicle, and now they're looking for, well, do I have something other way to get this off so I can get this done for and now you have a 3 hour tire change operation, right? And
Right.
and the potential for damaging. It's just it goes off the rails quickly, but at the beginning is where the problem is, right? Like at that very
And
beginning.
it's and yeah, and again, it's controlling, it's guiding the client through our process. This is how we do business. This is how we offer our level of service, and these are the requirements that you need to do in order to do business with us. And so we set those expectations as professional advisors. We set those expectations, requirements with our clients, get agreements, so that way it ensures when they drop their vehicle off, they know what's expected of them, and with that, the process will go a lot smoother. Just with a simple ask, right?
Sure, sure, yeah. So, that's a good first point. What's the next most important thing that a service advisor needs to execute uh, when we'll just on intake, shall we say?
On intake is well, I would say that when we're talking to clients, we have to have this understanding that clients are driving the unknown, and we might assume they know what we're talking about, or we might assume, like, for example, Andrew, I've taken many phone calls in my career. Someone will call up and say, my car has a vibration at 80 kilometers an hour. I need to book in for an alignment.
Right. Yeah.
And
So
that,
being the judge, jury, and executioner of what the problem is on their vehicle, right away.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And they do this because either they've gotten advice from a friend or a family member, maybe they've Googled it. But when they ask for something like that, they're really not sure what they're asking about, but they don't want to be duped. Maybe they want to, they're a little intimidated and they want to think, hey, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna let the shop talk down to me. I'm gonna let them know. And so when we get appointments and feedback from that from clients, that is a real opportunity to slow it down and say, okay, wait a minute here, because if the client understood what was happening with the vehicle, they probably wouldn't be asking for an alignment,
Right.
right? They would be asking for probably for a road test, looking at maybe tires being out of balance or who knows. Now, the alignment might have been the first reason why the vibration is being felt because the tires are worn, right? But it's also similar to if clients really knew how to service their vehicle and what's required, they would be doing it. Like if someone really understood the importance of, say, a timing belt, for example, if they really knew what could happen to their vehicle, they're probably going to not delay that timing belt service.
Yeah.
They're going to go ahead. But as advisors, when we recommend things, we have to think that clients are driving the unknown. And if we don't explain things in a way that they understand, hesitation is the client's default.
Right.
They don't know. They'll delay decisions, right? But once we get them to that level of understanding, then the light bulb goes off. It's like, oh, so this is what can happen if I don't change my timing belt, and actually my car is like 10,000 kilometers overdue for it. Does it, that's what I see. I have in my career, I've had people delay things and I never really understood why, right? And sometimes like I would assume maybe it's budget, maybe it's this, but it wasn't until I started asking clients, well, may I ask, have I been explaining myself okay? Do you have any more questions? Opening up that door for feedback, making them comfortable, and start building on that relationship, right? It's very similar to going to the doctor. Like when I go to the doctor now, it's rushed. And it was rushed 5 years ago. But you get in there and they're so busy and they're quick checking things. And then they're like, okay, well, like it's to the point now, Andrew, where when I go see my doctor once a year, I actually write things down that I want to ask them, because as soon as I get in there, if they're not, but imagine if the doctor slowed everything down and just, right? Because maybe I'm a little nervous about going to the doctor. Maybe I'm a little intimidated. Maybe I'm worried about my health, just like somebody be worried about their car. So the stress level's up here. The doctor calms things down. We have a conversation. We start to slow the process down. And then they start asking me, is there anything else? Or, this is what I recommend. Do you have any questions on this?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's not terrible advice for the customer either, to write these things down and to come in and say, look, you know what, I noticed I've had this, I noticed I've had that, and I've noticed I've had this, because, even again, with the best of intentions, it's not bad advice to give the customer, even if they said, hey, look, I'm calling you because I'm here for my tire changes, and be like, hey, look, is there anything else? And they'd be like, oh, no, it's fine. That's just that. So, well, if there's anything else that you come up with, like, we're going to reach out to you before your appointment.
right.
If there's anything else, like write it down in between if you think of it, and just communicate. We'll take a look. We're going to give your vehicle an inspection anyway, but if there's something specific, then let us know. And a lot of that is a consequence of built trust over time, though, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And reminding clients, like for example, I'll ask clients about their wiper blades, right? If they're coming in, say, for a maintenance service, or they're coming in, say, for a tire changeover. It's been a long winter here in Ontario. How are the wiper blades? Oh, thanks for mentioning that. My wiper blades stink, right? Like, please go ahead and change them, right? So there are things that we can slow that process down, understand that the client is really driving the unknown and they need our expert guidance. And sometimes we have to we need to slow it down and ask questions to get feedback. Because when we think of, this is another interesting point, is when clients call the shop, they're really cold calling us.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And who likes cold calling? A lot of advisors I talk to, that sometimes they don't want to call people because it's like, well, it feels like a cold call. Well, your clients are actually doing that because A, they're not sure who's going to answer the phone. B, they have no idea how busy you are. And C, they might not really even know what they're asking for. They just know they need an oil change, for example. Well, what does that mean? So they could be a little nervous about making that call. So we
Yeah.
need to bring that stress level down and make sure that we make time for that client. And
Sure.
that's where things happen, right?
Sure. Yeah. In a lot of cases now, a vehicle will say, time for an A service or time for a B service, or, visit a service shop now, which nobody ever wants to see. Um, but it doesn't, the car's telling them that, and, good on them if they're going to the independent that they trust, here's hoping, and not, maybe the affiliate dealer of that manufacturer. But yeah, they may not know it, may not tell them. It may just be like, look, I'm trying to do what my car tells me to do. But I don't know what that means. Like, what's an A service? What's a B service?
Right,
Uh,
right.
and so, yeah,
And
being able to walk that customer through and, as you say, slow that process down, right?
when we get to a point in the relationship, and when there's a question about a vehicle, so a client, whether they're having problems with the vehicle, whether they want to buy a new one, whether they're just looking for some advice, where we know we're operating at a high level is when that client has no hesitation and they know who they're going to call. So it's like Andrew's my shop, Andrew's my guy. I'm going to call them. I have a question. I'm thinking about buying a new car, or my car is making a noise. But think about a client that's not sure where to call. That the relationship isn't there yet. So if they hesitate and think, well, I went to this shop last time and I don't think they really did a great job, so now I'm going to call this. That just adds to their stress because they don't know who to call, they don't know who to trust. And the way to build relationships is just that. The more touch points we have with our clients and the more time we spend with them, the more the relationship, the more comfort that client has with us. It's not transactional anymore. We're actually asking about their baseball game or remembering the last time they were in about what we talked about, right? That's relationship. And once we get that relationship built, not only are we're top of mind when something vehicle related comes up with our clients, but now they start to refer their friends, their neighbors, their family to our shop. And now
Right.
that grows our business.
Yeah, and grows the
But
business, right? And so,
yeah,
just we've got a few minutes left here. I know we talked
yeah.
about sort of the intake process here. What about the cashing out process, which is where we kind of started out with our conversation here? I mean, how should that look at its best?
The cashing out process should be with our day, with our the age that we live in, with e-transfers and things like that. A lot of that communication can be done on the phone, be done text messaging, be done video call, or be done through email. But what we want to do is we always want to go through all the work that was performed today, right? So we want to go through that invoice. We also want to talk about the things that are up and coming. So important, right? And then maybe what we want to do is, or if because this is a big one for shops where there's lots of hesitation on, is actually booking that next appointment for the client. A lot of shops struggle doing that. They feel like they're being too pushy. But as professionals, this timing belt, for example, needs to be changed, and we recommend that it needs to be changed within the month or whatever. I'm going to offer an appointment to that client. So making that next appointment really should be part of the cashing out, right? So reviewing what the work that was done, um, reviewing things that are up and coming, and then also putting a plan together of what needs to happen now, what can happen at next service, kind of road mapping it for the client. We should never leave a client to figure out their vehicle on their own. We should always offer appointments. We should always offer our next communication. So if a client says, I don't want to book the next appointment right now, I would be like, okay, not a problem. What I'll do then is I'll reach out to you and say, in the next couple of weeks, just to see where you're at with your schedule, and then maybe we can plan to book something. I'm never leaving them alone.
Right, right. That's a really
Right.
great point because, I think oftentimes, a customer on their way out having paid, whether it's a big or a small bill, and then being hit with, potential recommended work or a few $100 or up to, maybe more than $1,000 worth of work to be done is kind of like, oh, geez, I just paid you, $400. I don't know that I want to like promise another bill like right away because my wallet still needs to like catch its breath or whatever. And then they
Right.
don't book it. But then if you don't reach out to them and remind, like, this is actually real work that needs to
Yes.
be done, um, in to my mind, and this is for the benefit of maybe everybody, it potentially brings into question in the mind of your customer. Well, was this really required work? They didn't follow up with me. They're not tracking me down, saying like, we told you about this work that we really, really think you need to do, and it's 6 weeks later now, or it's 2 weeks later, but we're not going to be able to get you in for 3 weeks anyway. Like, we really recommend that you book this because it's going to get worse and it's going to cause other issues
Yeah.
if we don't get this taken care of.
Right.
Then you start to wonder. I mean, I had an experience again decades ago where it was recommended I had service done. This is back in, I'm going to say this is the 80s. Recommended steering rack work. Got recommended only one time.
Yep.
It didn't fix itself.
Right.
And even back then when I was, young, I was like, well, I know it didn't fix itself, but they didn't seem to like ever mention it ever again. So like why not? I mean, I knew it was a big
Right.
job, but it was, why not? Is that
It's
is that because
it's
it fixed itself or it wasn't really required to begin with and they just wanted to get a big bill, but now that I said no,
yeah.
it's like, oh, I guess he didn't fall for it or something.
Yeah.
Like these are the thoughts that went through my head. Whereas if they'd said, we told you about this 6 months ago, it's not getting any better, like it's not safe.
Right. And that's that policy, that's that process, right? Of and when we talked at the top of the podcast about other people jumping in, well, this is where this can happen. So as an advisor, I've recommended that we do your steering rack. Let's say I'm off that day, someone's covering the counter, the client comes back in and there's nothing mentioned because they didn't check history.
Yeah.
Right. So again, it's process. And then those questions, you're absolutely right. Do I really need it? Again, clients are driving the unknown. My steering seems fine. Do I really need that? We need to be there to guide them. And Andrew, the one thing that I'm really passionate about is that service advising. It's not about creating work. It's about bringing clarity to the work that already exists but hasn't been understood yet. And how we get clients to understand is taking the time and being consistent. No, I don't want to do the steering rack now. No worries. I'm going to follow up with you within a month. Or, maybe the client doesn't even want that. The next time they're in for their next service, we bring that conversation up again, right? We're trying to get, because again, it's not about selling. That work already exists. We just need, and when we know that clients, when they're driving the unknown, that hesitation is their default. Once we bring light to the unknown and they finally understand, we've communicated to a point where they finally, the light bulb goes off and says, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't realize it was that important. Then decisions are being made, right?
Yeah, perfect. Well, that's great. Thanks, Jason. Getting clarity and consistency for customer sake, right, is really, that's the goal at best.
Yeah.
And certainly, these days, I think good customers will really appreciate that consultative approach. They want to keep those vehicles on the road as long as possible. New ones are super expensive.
Yep.
And people are realizing that they can drive their vehicle for a long time if it's well maintained, and part of the job is for the aftermarket to help them do that, right? So, good stuff.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks everyone
Awesome.
for listening. Clarity, consistency, and keep those customers happy. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
You're listening to the Great Canadian Aftermarket Podcast, brought to you by the publishers of Indie Garage and Jobber Nation. Connect with us online at indiegarage.ca and jobbernation.ca, a brand of Chat Integrated Media.